Welcome back to Coffee with the Authors. We interrupt our regular programming to bring you another story time with Wendelin. Early in my career, my publisher had me go out to a breakfast in Birmingham. It was a breakfast with librarians. And flying from California to Birmingham, Alabama was a series of long and somewhat delayed flights. So when I arrived at my hotel, I was exhausted. It had been all day. And when I called home, my kids were not happy. They were about 6 and 8 at the time. And Mark was not happy either. He had obviously had a very long day. So I went to bed exhausted. I had to go to bed because I had breakfast in the morning with these librarians. So early morning call, we go to breakfast with the librarians. And what I remember is that it was a modest sized room. I was at a round table with a handful of librarians. There were about 12 tables like mine. And the publisher went around and introduced all the authors. There were about a dozen authors there, introduced their most recent books. What I remember about what the publisher said was, he introduced Sammy Keyes, my character Sammy Keyes, and he said, "Long may she wave," which I just thought was awesome. But really, that's pretty much all I remember about the breakfast. What I remember about after the breakfast was that I got put on a plane and I was in the window seat, and in the 2 seats next to me were 3 people, one, an almost 2-year-old who did not want to be on that plane and had sticky hands and kept grabbing my hair. And when I checked in with Mark saying, "I'm on my way home," he's going, "What's going on?" And I couldn't really explain it to him. But the whole flight home was kind of that situation. I'm sure all of us have been there at some time. And all of us probably also been, one of those people with an unruly toddler at some point or another. But I was so tired. I got home and Mark had obviously had a really rough 24 hours as well. And he asked me, "Did you really just go to Birmingham, Alabama for breakfast?" And I said, "I guess so." So it became one of those things in our family lexicon where we started assessing things based on whether it was worthwhile or not. And it became, is this another breakfast in Birmingham? But about a year later, I got an invitation from one of those librarians that I had breakfast with. And she coordinated my visit back to Birmingham, Alabama. But this time I was doing school visits. I was doing like a week's worth of school visits. And they pay. So it was a really great week. And the hosts were wonderful. I am still friends with some of those librarians that hosted me then today. And also, the trip inspired this book that I wrote called Swear to Howdy. And 20 years later, that book is still in print and still selling well. So Breakfast in Birmingham has taken on a whole new kind of meaning. It's more like you have to have patience. You have to wait for the payoff of some of the things that you've invested your time and energy in. It won't always become apparent immediately what the benefit's going to be, but in the long run, things may pay off for you. So the reason I'm telling you all this now is because I've been invited to China. I've been invited to China, which I thought at first was, wow, I'm getting a trip to China. That's amazing because I've never been to China. Only then I had started to go through the visa process. Let me tell you, it's extensive and it's lengthy, and I'm not anywhere near a consulate. So it's a long drive to get to one. So you have to hire a firm to get this paperwork done in a timely way. And the invitation came, about 2 months before the event. And so it's a timely thing where there's been this crunch. And besides the visa process, it's a 15-hour flight. It's a really long way to get to China. So I started wondering, why in the world am I doing this? But then I had a Zoom meeting with the person who's coordinating my visit there. So in book festivals, and so this is South China Book Festival, and in book festivals, usually there's a whole bunch of authors, which there are going to be a whole bunch of authors, but they've made it global this year, and apparently I am the only novelist from the United States that's coming. So in the Zoom visit, I asked her about what other authors do you have coming. She said, oh, no, you're it. And I thought, oh, that's unusual. And then she talked some more and she said, don't be surprised if you see your image up on buildings and in the subway. And I'm like, okay, this is why I'm going to China. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I know it's going to be an adventure. And even though the visa process had me to a point where I almost said, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do this. And now I'm hopeful that it will be a breakfast in Birmingham situation and that I will come back with lots of stories for you, which I'm looking forward to sharing. The point here is that sometimes opportunities can seem like a waste of time, and sometimes they do turn out to be a bust, but sometimes they wind up returning to you way more than you've actually invested in them. So invest in every opportunity you get. Stay optimistic. Look for the silver linings. Hopefully a lot of your breakfast in Birminghams will come with dessert. I'll see you when I get back from China. And remember, in the meantime, dream big, work hard, don't give up.